It's one of the best audio production and mixing courses. How to participate, read the first pinned comment or the description. As always, every Monday I release 10% of the full class. Today we're gonna be talking about myths about clipping. A lot of people completely don't understand gain staging. They just think it's all about those levels like minus 18 decibels. Analog bass coloration, where exactly and what's going on, and when people say this is the level of the sweet spot, it's bullshit. It depends on the equipment you use. One of the main points of my course is to bust myths about audio production world. It's like Jeffrey, who's buying these full lessons right now, who say I was working with audio for 35 years, and all these full lessons just eye-opening even for him with his experience. How the system works and how to get full lessons, read the first pinned comment or the description. So when to avoid clipping? On the master bus, there are 3 potential reasons why it's dangerous. First place where it's dangerous, that final file may have clipping and that's it. Final file will have clipping. I'm gonna continue typing over here in a second, I'm gonna explain. My master bus is this channel, as you can see, purple one. Maximum peak over plenty of playing time shows minus 5 dB. So I have extra 5 decibels headroom just in case. What I'm saying, if your individual tracks before it was hotter than this, master bus starts clipping. It shows plus 4 dB, as you can see. You can say, but whatever, our mixers work in 32-bit floating point or 64-bit floating point. We saved, right? Because we have special protection called floating point, which I explained in the previous lesson, how it works exactly. I still insist you should not do it. Why? Because if you do bounce, you go file, export, or bounce to file. When you bounce to the final file, you commonly choose characteristics of the file which should match the platform of distribution. For example, if you plan to record your music on CD, you should choose 16-bit. If you plan to release, let's say, on Spotify for streaming, you should choose 24-bit. Once you choose 24-bit, done. That's it. So what you gonna do? Or here on this picture, as you can see on the left side, we have EBU 24-bit digital scale. It's exactly the scale you work with when you convert your project to the final file with 24-bit. I explained, by the way, bit depth theory exactly in the previous lesson. We're gonna have this plus 4 dB, all those peaks will be cut. You're gonna have digital distortion, you're gonna have peaks all cut like square waveform. And that's it, you're gonna have dirtier sound, it's more annoying. You may say, oh, it still sounds good. You know why it may still sound good for you? Because you have modern headphones or monitors. Commonly modern headphones specified to be fat, big and profound, just because we have so much amount of low end. High end sounds smoother and more pleasant. Once you listen to your mix on something like without these lows, like cell phone speaker or NSTEM monitors like I have over there on the top, that's it, it will sound like really harsh. Especially if you listen to louder, you know, like with the louder levels. You can say, oh, I can do it later, I can drop the fader down and blah blah blah. Whatever, I mean, I don't recommend to somehow fix it later. You should make sure everything really properly organized in your workflow, in your mixing. It's not okay just to create some random mess in one place and then somehow like lower down in the other place, you know. And I'm gonna prove this point just right now, because there is the second reason. Reason number 2 is some plugins issue. In some plugins it will be an issue instantly. Once your plugin really require proper levels on the input, because they may emulate exactly this analog bus, like we explained over here. Today we talked about these analog scales, and over here, as you can see on the left side of this picture, 26 dBu on the top. If your plugin properly emulates analog buses, and nowadays plenty of plugins emulations, all these channel strips, SSL plugins, all this, actually, unfortunately, or fortunately for you, if you make this mistake, majority of plugin manufacturers completely don't emulate analog clipping. They don't emulate what's going on when you come closer to the clipping point, what's going on when you go above clipping point. Their plugins only look like a real channel strip. In fact, it can be as transparent and you can go above red indicators, but your signal still pure and clear due to floating point of your DAW. Those emulations, of course, not correct. But if your emulation is correct, I'm not gonna compare plugins and stuff. Let's say this is the plugin of IK Multimedia, which is SSL Master Bus Compressor. On the input of this plugin, you already have clipping, so your levels are too hot. So you apply it over here. I'm gonna use like very standard settings, something like in the middle, like 3 milliseconds attack, release automatic, ratio 2:1, makeup, I'm gonna add up a bit later, and now I try to compress. When I rotate threshold to the left side, it will be too much compression. If I apply all the way to the right side, this compressor is not supposed to compress at all, but your level's already too hot. This plugin actually has this like extra saturation emulation of this compressor, so it definitely gonna oversaturate your song already. But even compression amount is not possible to set up. Even with the highest threshold, which should give you the lowest level of compression, you still get 3 dB of compression. But why 3 dB? Maybe I want just 1 dB. You know, levels are so hot for this plugin that this plugin is not even possible to set up in any way that you can decrease amount of compression other than you handle clipping first on the master bus. Another issue with all this, let's say this plugin has this makeup. It deals with output transformer. So when you put, let's say, classic old SSL master bus compressor had this extra saturation coming from output transformer. So the more right now you add up makeup gain, the more saturation additionally you should get. Again, I'm not gonna say about this plugin exactly. I'm talking about real SSL master bus compressor and all of older generation from 4000 consoles. You already understood even input of this plugin had 2 hot levels. Even for this makeup level, like 0 dB, it's already too hot level. This transformer already consumes very hot level on its input. So it produces much more saturation than needed. And when we're talking about getting even more, like compressor makes everything quieter, so you need to get your song a bit louder to restore lost volumes. Because compressor always decrease volumes, other than it has automatic makeup gain. So I should rotate makeup to the right side, but it's already too saturated, so I should do it even dirtier. And it's all just because of your master bus is clipping. You say, I want some EQ, right? Again, I'm not gonna right now talk about this particular EQ. Maybe it doesn't have proper emulation, maybe it has. Just as an example, let's say you have some pull tech equalizer. Tube, juicy, nice. It should give you like little bit extra from the tubes, you know, from coloration of this equalizer, but you put so hot level to this EQ. Now you, let's say, raise up some highs and lows or something. You're gonna put even more accent to those frequencies with all this crazy saturation coming from this. Now imagine you have in a row maybe multiple plugins to process the whole song. You in this sort of a territory when people like to process their mixes with many processors, master bus compressor, like some colorful EQ, you know, maybe some extra enhancer and stuff like this. Again, it depends on approaches, but what I'm saying is you're gonna not just saturate on just pull tech EQ or SSL, you're gonna saturate there and there and there and there multiple times. Now you're gonna throw tape machine emulation. Signals will be coming to this tape machine emulation not at 0 dBu. It will be coming with plus 20 decibels instead of 0. It will be oversaturating for your tape machine emulation. You can say, I can put down the fader on the master bus. Yes, it will be looking like you don't have any red alarm. But this fader goes after insert points. This inserts, anyway, too hot level will be going to this EQ. It will be too dirty, too saturated, and then you just hide the problem with this fader. But the problem's still in your sound, you just don't see it in your DAW. But by ears it's anyway over there already. You know, so that's why I'm saying don't play fool, just put master bus at 0, manage individual tracks to be not too hot, and then signals will be going to all these plugins with proper levels like supposed to be. And then you can modify, you can put extra juice, but on a plugin with your controllable amount, not just like a random amount which you get with clipping, you know. Even if you say, I don't put those plugins on the master bus, I hate these all emulations, I use only digital processors which have nothing to do with clipping, they super clean, they have floating point, they even protect from clipping, and you're still not gonna be right. You know why? Because you're gonna even monitor your mix with distortion coming from your converters. So it's a third reason. Let me explain. For example, right now, I don't have even one plugin on the master bus. Maybe you have this approach when you claim nothing should be put on the master bus at all. Okay, let's say it's your choice. You play like this. Now, let's be honest, when you start mixing, you need to make decisions, right? How each instrument sounds, what level it has, if it's smooth or dirty, if it's harsh or muddy, if it requires some frequency adjustments, dynamic adjustments, and even coloration adjustments. Maybe some instruments should be juicier with some enhancers, preamp emulations, console emulations, and so on. How you can know how your mix sounds, you already hear it incorrectly, not like your mix supposed to sound. It's not your sound of your mix. I even hear this like on the kick. Every time when I hear this instrument, it already goes above 0. While it's in DAW, maybe it doesn't have any issue. But anyway, you hear this mix with your speakers or headphones. But to send this signal to your headphones or monitors, this signal already coming out of the DAW, it will be converted by converters of your audio interface, which is not 32-bit with floating point. Converters usually have 24-bit. Even if you claim your converter has 32-bit, it doesn't have floating point. So clipping already may sound distorted on those converters. And they will be sounding distorted. I hear this distortion right now in my speakers. So this mix doesn't sound distorted, but actually it sounds distorted. For me now, kick already dirty. I already will not put more top end because it will be even dirtier. It will change all my decisions for this kick. You all the time heard the sound with distortion. You made all your decisions like this. You didn't apply enhancers where it was needed. You didn't adjust frequencies where it was needed. You heard maybe brighter and more transparent or more detailed snare drum, not because of your snare drum sounds like this, but because of your converter made the snare drum look like it has more highs and more distortion and more harmonics. But it's a fake, because it's what your converter created for you in your speakers. Once you're actually all faders, much quieter like this. So I have something like minus 6 dB on the master bus. In this case, you don't hear this distortion from converter, so you can really make decisions right now based on how your mix really sounds like. As I already explained, let's put this as an extra hint. Don't touch master bus fader. Keep it at 0 and then manipulate everything else around, so you always know that your master bus properly set up. I'm gonna show you one simple example, another example how master bus can be completely spoiled. Let's say I put EQ on the master bus like this. For some reason I boosted, who knows, some frequencies, lows, let's say around 100. I boosted too much. Now it shows plus 4 dB, right? Even plugin shows plus 4 dB. Master bus shows plus 6.4 dB. It's completely clipped, If you put some plugins next, like those Pultec or SSL master bus compressor, some super hot level will be going to the input of those plugins and you completely oversaturate your mix. But if your fader, by mistake, just all the time for some reason minus 7 or minus 10, you don't even know it's clipping. For you, everything looks fine, right? Minus 0.5, still not above 0, seems like clear sound. You put next plugin, SSL master bus compressor after Pro Q4 equalizer, and that's it, you spoil the whole mix. Because you simply didn't know that it's completely crazy going on inside on those plugins. Next, where not to have clipping is when printing files. Something like you print your music on CD audio, why not, right? Let's say you go to some concert of some rock band in foyer, if you know what foyer is, in the corridor, you know what I mean? They sell the whole collection of their albums on CD or something like this, I literally have CD in my car, I even bought AC/DC Ballbreaker album CD disc for myself. When you bounce from virtual instruments to audio files, let's say this snare drum has clipping 4.7 above 0. I want to convert this virtual instrument to the audio file. I lost so many projects because I was lazy to convert to audio, It's very important suggestion. Let's say in Logic, when you use slow way of converting audio to audio files, export, you can choose 32-bit with floating point. If you use more fast way, which I'm sure 99% of logic users use this option, it's region in place, because you just use this command. The problem is in logic it's only in 24-bit. So if now I convert this snare drum with this clipping, where this clipping coming not from the fader, right, but let's say inside of software, inside of drum machine it was clipped, and now I'm gonna bounce in place with 24-bit, that's it. New file will have this constant clipping and you cannot fix it anymore. And the last one but not least one, in plugins. Oh, this is crazy. A lot of people, it's fader at 0. Let's say I fix all this craziness inside of drum machine, right? So drum machine doesn't give us any clipping anymore. Minus 0.2. Now let's say you put some plugin, even the most transparent one. As you can see, it shows red alarm on the output, but in fact, you can save your sound later. You can put this fader down and you're not gonna have any clipping, because this clipping is not printed by the plugin. Plugin has floating point, as your mixer has floating point, so it's protected. Peak is not lost, it's not cut yet. The problem is, it's just inconvenient way of doing it like this, you know, because you all the time will need to put these faders too low. You will not really understand what kind of real level you can control only output of the channel strip of this channel. You can put any next plugin which just consumes either too hot level because of your equalizer has a red alarm. You put some analog emulations, input section can be just saturating more. I'm not even talking about clipping. Imagine any plugin which emulates harmonics, enhancers, whatever. It all depends what input level you send to these plugins. Now you send two hot levels to those plugins. With this hot level, let's say you put some tape machine. As you can see, there is output knob on this plugin which you can put down a bit like this. -5 on the output, and that's it. Plugin is not clipping. So why you really have to deal with all this oversaturation all the time? Just because of you lazy to control levels inside of your plugins. Now let's talk about -18 dB theory. In the full lesson we just had scales about dBu, analog scale. I bust all these myths where exactly sweet spot is. Myth about -18 dB. We talked about VU meters. We talked about saturation at different levels. I explained a couple of examples of different equipment where exactly their sweet spot and how saturation works over there. How to buy any full lesson, read the description and the first pinned comment.